That was not what I was trying to do.
I was
It's like,
wondering if that was just me.
yeah. No, it's like hung up here. We're live right now. I'm just going to cut all this later, but
Oh yeah.
I have no idea what it's doing right now. Oh well. I'm just going to do our intro and we'll pretend this never happened. Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 209 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by the best co host in the game. You've heard him on the Saturday morning spread right here on the Eagles Pinpole Network. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. You know what? I was gonna save this for final thoughts, but something will come up that I'll want to do final thoughts on. This is a fun fact and a chalk talk callback for the people. You may remember if you're a long time listener to the show that one time there was a city that came up in by the name of Toledo that I was very confident that I knew the mascot of the college, which I thought was the Mud Hens. Turns out that was the minor league baseball team's mascot, and it was actually the Toledo Rockets, and I am in Toledo. So, a little chalk talk callback.
All right, I do remember that was one of the funnier. We were talking about Quinyon Mitchell then, if I recall correctly.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, fun stuff. So Mark in Toledo. Um, I am gonna play a soundbite right here, and it has nothing to do with the show. I'm just gonna see if it'll make our layout go back to normal. So ignore this. Yeah, a round of applause for Mark in Toledo. That did not seem to fix the layout, so we're just gonna roll with it. But that's all right because even if our layout's not the best, the audio will be good later. And it's not like this was a good week of football, anyways. And I know that's not the best introduction to a show, but this might be the worst week of football that I've watched in as long as I can remember. Um, the average margin of victory this week was 18 and a half points. And there was only one game decided by single digits. 9 of 13 games were decided by 17 or more points this weekend. And so it's just not a good week of football, but we're going to talk about it all anyways. And yeah, we've got comments coming in. Apparently they can't hear the sound bites, and I'm big on the screen and Mark's little. It won't let me fix it. It's just like hung up in a limbo. Honestly, we should almost just restart the show, but we're not going to do it. We're just going to keep rolling. Just hold a magnifying glass over Mark. It'll be fine. Mark, let's dive into the Thursday night football schedule, or into the slate. We'll start with Thursday night football as we often do. And this game was not a good game, as many of them were not in this week. But the Chargers just blast the Vikings 37-10, and the inflection point in this game came on the Chargers' opening drive when Justin Herbert was intercepted by Isaiah Rodgers, who returned it for a touchdown, only to have it overturned upon review. And then the Chargers marched 86 yards for a touchdown and never looked back. I thought Justin Herbert played really well in this game. He was effective as a scrambler, effective through the air. Kamani Vidal rushed for 117 yards. Joe Alt helped stabilize the offensive line, even with Mekhi Becton leaving on the opening drive. On the flip side, Carson Wentz was just battered all night. He was sacked 5 times. The Vikings didn't even attempt to run the ball. They only had 11 carries. And then it's come out since then that Carson Wentz had a torn labrum 3 weeks ago, and he played through that. What Kevin O'Connell did, leaving him out there, was malpractice. And I think there is perhaps a larger discussion to be had about that, but it's not necessarily one that I want to dive into. But Mark, did you have any takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I mean, it can inspire confidence in JJ McCarthy, right? Like, because
Yeah.
I don't think that this ankle injury was some debilitating injury that he had to be out for 2 months for, and they didn't put him on the IR for that reason, I believe. And he's there. Did you see the play where someone rolled out of bounds on the sideline and he like hopped over them and
Yeah, it
did
was
like a
Justin
hurdle?
Jefferson, right?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, and it's like that's the type of thing like that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like and it's not as bad because it's not JJ McCarthy asking to sit or like, and as far as we know, it's not him being like, hey, I can't play, I'm hurt or whatever. That's the kind of similar vibe though to the Colts team really quitting on Anthony Richardson when he asked out. Like I could see this kind of really spiraling for the Vikings and spiraling for JJ and how hard the rest of the team plays for JJ now when he comes back because and maybe that's a dumb thing to think and maybe that's overreacting, but what a weird way to handle it and what a weird way to show a lack of faith in JJ, even if you want to try to mask it in an injury, because now you can't really act like, oh, we're all concerned about injury. You just put Carson Wentz out there when he had no way of defending himself against like a pass rush at all. So yeah, it's really, really maddening. On the other side, Joe All looking like the MVP. Have they won every game he's played and lost the two he's been out in? I want to
I'm
say
not
that
sure
is.
about that.
I want to say that is the case. I know I saw tweets out there about like it was I think the offense just the averages when he's out there and when he's not, and pressures allowed and points per game, and it is astounding how big of a difference Joe Alt makes for that team. You go from a below average tackle on both sides to a below average tackle on one side and maybe arguably one of the best in the sport on the other side. It makes a pretty big difference.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep rolling on to the Sunday slate. The Miami Dolphins beat the Atlanta Falcons 34-10. This Falcons team beat the Bills, but lost 30-3 or 30-0 to the Panthers and 34-10 to the Dolphins. Now, granted, this was with Kirk Cousins, who looked bad and then immediately said he wants to be traded to a place where he can be QB1 at the trade deadline. But he was also missing Drake London, but they also couldn't run the ball on a very soft Dolphins defense. The Dolphins defense ranked last in rushing yards allowed per game, and you couldn't run the ball with a backup quarterback and missing your number one receiver. Their defense got torched through the air. Their offense went 3 and out on 4 of their first 5 possessions. And for the Dolphins, I mean, Tua went 20-26 for 205 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jalen Waddle had 5 catches, 99 yards and a touchdown. But it's nice for Dolphins fans to have fun with that. I still think the Dolphins aren't going to go anywhere. But you just kind of have major question marks about the Falcons coming out of this one too, which maybe isn't fair when they're missing QB1 and wide receiver 1, but I have those questions nevertheless.
Yeah, Drake London going out right before the game was pretty crazy. He was added to the injury report late, and then he gets announced out, so that has to change some of the game plan, especially when you're going into the backup. Part of me almost wonders if they did a similar thing with the Vikings, where it was Penix is banged up, probably can play, but trade deadline's coming up. Let's get Kirk in against a bad Dolphins defense and try to show him off, and then Kirk goes out and stinks it up and kills any value he might have had. So it's like a double whammy for the Falcons losing this game. And now Kirk, even if someone gets hurt or something next week, when's the deadline? I'm sorry.
I think it's next Tuesday.
Yeah, I thought it was next week. Yeah. So it's now if someone gets hurt this weekend, you could have seen someone trade a 3rd or a 4th round pick for Kirk maybe after Sunday. But now after watching that, they're not going to get anything for Kirk. So just an all-around pathetic showing from Atlanta. And I quit Atlanta. Raheem Morris is a joke. You lose 30-0, like you said. Then you beat the Bills. Then you show up, and in between this one and the Bills game, they lost 20-10 to a Niners team that looked like a dead team walking the week after. And then you show up and you don't even try against Miami. They were a touchdown favorite here in this game. they're just so Jekyll and Hyde. Carolina's similar, but Atlanta, at least it seemed like, at least at home, they show up, and that was not the case here. Tua was sick apparently coming into this game as well, and came out and absolutely diced them up. So, yeah, just a terrible showing from Atlanta. Raheem Morris can start lining up defensive coordinator gigs, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting thinking through some of these teams and some of the jobs that are probably going to come open this offseason. Let's go to the only good game of the slate. Literally the only game that was decided by single-digit points is the winless Jets getting a 39-38 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. And after Woody Johnson publicly eviscerates Justin Fields and the Jets decide to bench him, Tyrod Taylor gets hurt and Fields finds himself back on the field a week later. And he wasn't great, I guess, but the rushing attack came alive against the Bengals. They rushed for 254 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then down 6, with about 2 minutes left to play, they ran a running back pass on 1st and goal from the 4. And Breece Hall connected with Mason Taylor for the go-ahead touchdown. And we could make jokes about they were more confident in Breece Hall throwing the touchdown than Justin Fields, except we like Fields on this podcast. And so we won't make those jokes, but I'm sure they will circulate online nevertheless. The Bengals scored on 6 of their first 8 possessions, and they led by 2 scores for most of the game, but the Bengals defense utterly collapsed in this one. They gave up 502 yards to a team that tried to bench their quarterback and was missing their top wide receiver. And then they allowed touchdowns on the Jets' final 3 drives and 2-point conversions on 2 of the 3, and then the Jets kicked a PAT the 3rd time. The Jets' win percentage was under 3% with 8 minutes and 41 seconds left. And they scored 15 unanswered points, limiting the Bengals to only 9 offensive plays in the final 10 minutes. And for Zach Taylor, this has got to be near the end of the line for him, right? Like last year you fire Lou Anarumo because no money is invested into your defense and he can't make it good anymore. And you kind of scapegoat him, and he goes to Indianapolis. And I don't know if you know anything about Indianapolis this year, but they look pretty good, Mark. And I know the Bengals lose Joe Burrow, but that seems to be a every other year occurrence. I feel like the seat's got to be getting a little hot under Zach Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest hope, Shane, on the planet is that Zach Taylor's fired, or at least that Al Golden's fired, so Al Golden can come back home to Notre Dame and be the defensive coordinator. Notre Dame has the best offense of my lifetime as a Notre Dame fan. It is unbelievable. They have the best running back in the country, 2 of the top 5 best running backs in the country. This isn't a college football show. I'll stop my tangent in a second. But they have the worst defense maybe of my lifetime as a Notre Dame fan. And Al Golden is sorely missed as Cincinnati's defensive coordinator. So I pray that Zach Taylor gets fired. I said when Burrow went down that I think that injury will save Zach Taylor's job. I still think that happens. I still think Taylor comes back. And I think Taylor is able to point to the offense the last 2 weeks saying, look at what we did with Flacco. We scored 38 this week, and they scored 33 last week against Pittsburgh. And I think you can point to the offense, how it has looked these last couple of weeks, and credit Zach with that. But on this show, we have really pointed out the problems with Zach Taylor as a coach, the problems with the way this team is put together defensively, the way that everything about the Bengals operation outside of Joe Burrow, pretty much the way they handled the drama of the offseason with their free agents and draft pick. They're a clown show. And I think that the clown show will continue next year. But the craziest thing about this game, I don't even have much to say about the Jets. But other than to say, I'll say something about Nick Mangold in a second. But the Bengals, you win this game and you're 4-4, and you're talking about a team that's a half game behind Pittsburgh with a win over Pittsburgh already in the division, and Pittsburgh's playing Indianapolis this week. Like, you're talking about a team that would have really, really been feeling good. And again, Cincinnati's favored this week at home against Chicago, which I disagree with, but Vegas thinks they're going to win that game. So you could have been favored to have a winning record after next week and a potential lead of your division, but you blew a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter to Justin Fields and the New York Jets. But the Brees Hall touchdown, that throwing touchdown that Brees Hall, that was the one that put them up, I believe, right?
Yes, yeah.
That was touched. That was Nick Mangold. Shout out to Nick Mangold, R.I.P. Really, really sad story. Absolutely brutal story. If anybody out there didn't see it, that was announced on Sunday morning that he had passed away. Nick Mangold and I became kind of Twitter pals a couple of years ago when I first started calling it. This is actually like 4 years ago when I first started calling into Barstool in Pick Central, giving picks out. I had a hot streak that got me some Twitter followers at the time. And Nick Mangold was a big Barstool fan, so he was a listener. He followed me. And then when he started going on the Barstool shows where he had to give picks, he would DM me sometimes for my picks early in the week. It was always super nice. One time he gave me a shout out on the show. Nick Mangold was always super nice to me. Big Barstool fan, and really, really sad. Always talked about his family a lot on the Barstool shows. I had 4 kids. Horrible story. And the Jets winning felt poetic on that day for Nick Mangold.
Yeah. I need to go check and see if there is a circle of parity complete for the NFL yet this season. That's something I always like to track, and it's certainly possible now that there are no undefeated teams and every team at least has a win, but I'll have to try to check that out and follow that up next week. But yeah, rest in peace to Nick Mangold. I did not know that you had corresponded with him some. That's a neat story to hear for sure.
Yeah,
and
nice guy.
Far more interesting to talk about than most of these football games this week for sure. But we'll continue to roll on and talk about the rest of the football. I'm doing my best to drive all our listeners away. I'm like, hey, I mean, this week was bad. You should just turn off the podcast now. Only don't, because Mark and I are fun and we want to chat about these games. So maybe we'll pick some things up along the way. But we'll go to New England next, and the Patriots beat the Browns 32-13, and Myles Garrett recorded 5 sacks in a game that his team lost by 3 possessions. Previously, no player had ever recorded 5 sacks and lost by more than 3 points. Myles Garrett lost by 3 possessions. And that's really all there is to say about Cleveland. I mean, I have nothing else to say about them. They're just not an interesting football team. It's a terrible situation, terrible constructed roster, and it just is what it is. And they're going to continue to slog through this season and, be like, I never thought I'd say this, but just be like the Giants. Like, be a bad team that drafts a player that's kind of exciting and fun to watch. Give your fan base some hope, and the Browns just don't have that. But the Patriots do have a lot of hope because Drake May continues to be awesome. He goes 18-24 in this game for 282 yards, 3 touchdowns. He does toss 1 interception. Travion Henderson nearly tripled Ramondre Stevenson's yardage, despite getting less carries. He had 75 yards on 10 carries versus Ramondre having 34 yards on 14 carries. I don't know why they continue to give Ramondre the football. Maybe it's because Travion fumbled. He did have a fumble in this game, and coaches obviously don't like to see that. But Drake May looks like an MVP candidate while throwing to Mac Hollins and Kayshon Boutte. He is so good. This was his 8th straight game with a positive completion percentage over expectation, and it was his 7th straight game with 200 or more passing yards and a 100 or higher passer rating. The only other quarterback in NFL history to do that at his age is Patrick Mahomes. And so Drake May is a guy that when we did our QB rankings last offseason, we didn't rank him because we just said we thought he was in such a bad situation that to put him where his play would mean you would have to slot him would be unfair to him because we both thought he was better than that. And he's been a top 8 quarterback, I believe, in the NFL this season. And he's still doing it in a bad situation. He just has a better coach, and he's got a year under his belt. But Drake May is awesome.
I am glad. I have to go find, because we definitely I probably would have talked about it when we talked about the Patriots in the offseason, I imagine. But I have to go find my offseason take where I was like, I'm not giving up on my Drake May over Jaden Daniels take. And that's not to crap on Jaden Daniels. He's been injured for most of this year, and I wouldn't say even been bad when he's played. But uh, right now, going forward, we're both taking May over Daniels, right?
Yes,
And we
absolutely,
were
with
both
no
there before the draft.
reservation.
Yeah, and I don't think that's crazy at all because I feel the same way. We were both there before the draft. We're what he's doing now, I think, is at least as impressive, if not more impressive, than what Jaden did last year, and maybe even with less talent around him than Jaden had last year. You could argue. So
And that's not a knock on Jaden, who was fantastic,
yeah,
but you're seeing my worst fears about Jaden Daniels play out this season. We'll get there in a minute, but I mean he's missing games for the second time this season with two different injuries, and that was always a big concern of mine with him.
yeah, and they're going to be linked forever for us, at least on this show, at least because we were both pretty passionate on May over Jaden, and that's not to say I think we were both pretty high on Jaden. I know I had him top 7 or 8 overall, I think, but I had May, I think second overall if I'm remembering correctly, and I would like I would like a mulligan on who I had one over May, but I was pretty strong on May being a generational prospect, and I think he's fully lived that out so far this year. And what I was watching with a buddy this week who just mainly an Eagles fan, but he plays in fantasy and he has Drake May in fantasy. And he's like, man, he's been really good, but I haven't really watched him. We were watching a couple of the games, and we had Red Zone on. He turned to me after one of the I forget which Drake May passing touchdown it was, but it was a really nice throw. And he was like, "Wow, so this is real. Like he's like gonna be like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, huh?" And I was like, "He already is, pal." Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for what it's worth, you and I both had Drake May number 3 in that draft class.
oh
Um,
wow, who did I have two? Marv.
yeah, we had the same top 3: Caleb, Marvin Harrison, Drake May, and then you had Jaden Daniels at 6. I had him at
Oh wow.
15. He was QB3 for both of us. I just had him further down the list behind some other guys.
I think that I bumped him up when we got closer, to be honest. Because I think earlier on in the process, I think he was somewhere in the 7 through 10 range for me. But yeah,
Okay.
but anyway, just one final thing, or two final things, I should say. Shador Sanders should be playing. It's a joke that he's not. And then, as for the Patriots, tell me if they're going to lose any of these games. They have Atlanta at home this week. They're a touchdown favorite.
No.
They have a game in 2 weeks against the Jets at home.
No.
They have a game against the Cincinnati Bengals on the road.
No.
They have a game against the Giants at home.
Nope.
They have a game against the Jets on the road, second and last game of the year.
Nope.
And they have a game at home to close the year against the Miami Dolphins.
Only if they're resting starters.
That's 6 wins that we're just saying there's pretty much no way they're going to lose those games. That's 12 wins right there. And then that's not even to say that the games that I didn't list are impossible. It's at Tampa. Tampa's looked human recently. It's the Bills. They already beat the Bills at home. They already beat the Bills in Buffalo. And then it's at Baltimore, who knows what Baltimore's season turns into. I think I did this a couple weeks ago when we talked about the Patriots, but now that they're 6-2, it feels even more real to talk about this. There's a much better chance that the Patriots are the 1 seed than that the Patriots miss the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, can you imagine? Just that'd be really cool to see. I bore a lot of ill will towards the Patriots for years because I didn't like Brady and I didn't like Belichick, and it's more Belichick than Brady. But now those guys are gone, and I like Vrabel. I like Drake May. I would love to see them make a run like this, especially if they can knock the Chiefs out of here, so we don't have to do the whole Chiefs thing again. But, anyways, let's keep rolling. Buffalo at Carolina. Talk about rolling. Buffalo wins 40-9. This was the James Cook game. He rushed for 216 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 19 carries. The defense performed well, but I mean, what do you take away from beating the Panthers with Andy Dalton at the helm? For the Panthers, they had won 3 straight, but none of those wins had been over teams with a winning record, and they weren't even competitive in this game. I will say, let's talk about Rico Dowdle and the Panthers' just inability to even pick the best running back on their roster, because Rico Dowdle rushed for 389 yards in 2 games when given the chance, while a struggling Chuba Hubbard was injured. Chuba comes back and they split carries against the Jets last week, and Chuba rushes for 2.2 yards per carry compared to Rico's 4.6. So naturally this week they doubled down and they gave Chuba more carries than Rico, and he goes 2.8 yards per carry versus Rico's 6.8. And then asked if they were thinking about giving Rico a heavier workload moving forward. Dave Canales still wouldn't commit to it and said we'll look into it. Like, that's so blatantly obvious. I feel like if you can't catch that, if you can't figure that one out, you're just not going to be able to figure much out in Carolina.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm considering talking about firing Dave Canales in a year where the Panthers are 4-4. But how do you take anything? It's similar to Atlanta where it's so up and down. How do you take anything away from this Panthers season, where you've lost 40-9 to Buffalo, you lost 42-13 to New England, you got beat by a bad Arizona team, a mid Jacksonville team, but you also beat Dallas. You also beat the crap out of Atlanta. Like, you're 4-4. You probably haven't been 4-4 in quite some time in Carolina. So I have no idea what to say about Carolina. I will say the Bills are probably back. This is what you should do if you're the Bills. But I do think that the right team is favored next week in that game in Kansas City at Buffalo, America's Game of the Week at 4:25. Kansas City is a 2-point favorite in that game. I will be on Kansas City in that game. I think Kansas City has figured out their problems and had to go through the wars a bit more than Buffalo. So I think Buffalo still probably has some figuring out to do, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they put it all together for this game against Carolina, and that'll just keep on rolling.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun game to watch next week for sure. Gives you a good preview, perhaps, of where the AFC is headed at the top.
They're going to play in the AFC playoffs, whether it's early in the playoffs or in the AFC Championship. I have a hard time seeing anybody else beating either of those teams.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Baltimore. Chicago goes to Baltimore, loses 16-30. Brett Eclipse said earlier that he really appreciates the rest of the AFC North teaming up to keep Baltimore in the playoff race here. Amid all the drama about the Ravens lying about Lamar Jackson's health on the injury report, Tyler Huntley steps in and plays well. He goes 17-22 for 186 yards and a touchdown. He rushed for 53 yards. The Ravens scored on 6 of their 8 possessions. They settled for too many field goals in the red zone, but it was enough to get a win and keep their season alive, especially coupled with all the other losses in the division. The Bears also had issues settling for field goals. They had a 1st and goal from the 6-yard line that resulted in a field goal on their opening drive. On their next drive, they had a 1st and 10 from the 25 and settled for a field goal. Caleb Williams had 2 intentional grounding calls. He threw an interception in the 4th quarter that set the Ravens up on the 9-yard line to score a touchdown to push the lead out to 2 scores. Not a good look for the Bears. Kyle Hamilton had a good game in this one. He logged 61% of his snaps in the box, which is his highest rate in 3 years. He rushed the passer 10 times, recorded 2 pressures, both of which were season highs. And he also had 2 run stops in his first run stuff of the season. And so Kyle Hamilton making a big difference in a little bit different deployment than he's used to. But the Ravens get the win, and they give themselves a little more time for Lamar to get back.
Caleb was horrible in this game. It's, the stats are one thing. For him to go 25-38, 285. He obviously has the one pick in there, only took 1 sack, but like you said, the intentional groundings. It doesn't really matter that much, but at the very end of the game, it was 30-16. The Bears had the ball with no timeouts, and they had first and goal at the 3 with a minute and 18 seconds left. They throw incomplete, so they have a minute and 14 seconds left. They throw a short pass, like at this point. Kyle Hamilton makes a good play to stop them at the 1 yard line, and there is no urgency from Caleb at all to get to the line and to hike this ball. And then Caleb tries to run it in and gets tackled. He's still on the 1 yard line. There's again no urgency from the time they hike the ball on second down to the time they hike the ball on fourth down, where they gained 0 yards. It's not like they had to run and spot the ball like crazy far, and everybody had to run and adjust. It took 44. Actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, it took 45 seconds of game time to get 2 plays off. How is that the case when you're down 14 points? If you have to score, you're gonna have to onside kick it. It doesn't really, again, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, were they gonna come back and win the game? No, but it's just like we have seen time and time again. Caleb shows, and I'm a Caleb supporter. I think, like, for the most part, like, even when I'm saying this right now, like, I'm in this one chat that talks football, and they're saying, like, he's gonna get benched and he's not a starting quarterback and he won't be the starter next year in week 1, and maybe that's true. But, like, I think Caleb's very much, even with the flaws, a starting quarterback, and everything that I'm going to say now. I still think he's like a top 25, top 22 guy. But having said that, he shows just like a complete lack of awareness. It feels like on the football field for situations. And then to make it worse, on fourth down, DJ Moore was wide open in the back of the end zone, and he just sails it. Just totally misses him, tries to kind of like throw it sidearm to get it around a pass rusher a little bit, but it was a mostly clean pocket. He probably waited too long to throw the ball, if anything. Really, really rough day for Caleb. I bet Chicago in this game, and watched a good bit of this game. Really, really bad stuff if you're a Bears fan after a 4-game winning streak, and some strides from Caleb, even if he wasn't putting up big numbers. This was a big time regression, even if the stats say otherwise.
Yeah. All right, let's keep rolling. Let's go to Houston, where the Texans beat the 49ers 26-15. This was the first time in 25 games where CJ Stroud wasn't sacked, which excludes a Week 18 game last year where he only played 1 drive. But 25 games since he won a game without being sacked. There were only 2 games in that whole span where he wasn't sacked more than once. And so he was kept clean. He went 30 of 39 for 318 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick. 6 of 7 for 103 yards and a touchdown when pressured. Rookie running back Woody Marks had 11 carries for 62 yards. He had 49 receiving yards on 4 receptions. I feel like the 49ers got off to a slow start. They failed to move the ball on any of their first 3 possessions. They trailed 16-0 with under a minute to go in the first half. But then they got a big kickoff return and a face mask on top of that set them up at the Houston 35-yard line. And they scored a touchdown to make it 16-7. And you felt like maybe they could get something going. And they just didn't really. The Texans only sacked Mac Jones twice, but they pressured him 22 times. Christian McCaffrey didn't do much in this game. However, he did become the 5th player to ever record 5,000 rushing and 5,000 receiving yards in his career. So shout out to McCaffrey for that, but not much else went right for the 49ers in this one.
Yeah, this was one of my biggest bets of the week. Got this one dead wrong. I was trying. Yeah, at halftime, the Texans had 299 yards to San Fran's 65, and it was only 16-7 at that point. So San Fran was lucky to still be in the game at that point. But yeah, it feels like San Fran just, they stuck up against Atlanta, even all banged up, and found a way to to win the game, but it wasn't going to happen against Houston. And I saw Ben Solak has been talking about this, about the Texans. I guess it started last week for Houston, I think, especially in the second half, where they've really been emphasizing quick passes and getting the ball out as quick as possible for CJ. He had 28 pass attempts in the first half against San Fran, which is the most in the first half in his career. And like I said, they had 299 yards. He only had a 2.67 time to throw out of that. 80% of the attempts were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. I saw there was some other tweets out there that were even kind of going deeper on their new strategy and how it started last week. But yeah, it does seem like they've made some adjustments to how bad that start of the year was for the offensive line. Yeah, here was the other one. First drive of the third quarter, coming out of that 12 plays, 7 passes, 3 third down conversions. 6 of them were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So they were just going all in on that strategy, and it seems to have worked, and it's probably something they're going to go going forward. But I'm going to keep betting against Houston because next week they're favored against Denver, a 1.5 point favorite. Every time Houston's played a somewhat competent team, I've bet against Houston. I'm going to keep that going next week.
All right, well, let's get into the afternoon slate. Tampa Bay beats New Orleans 23-3. The Bucks drove down to a 1st and goal at the 1-yard line, and they were stuffed on 4 straight runs to turn the ball over. That's unfathomable to me, to have 1st and goal at the 1 and run the ball 4 straight times. And it's not like the first one got blown up for a 5-yard loss. It was 1st and goal at the 1, 2nd goal at the 1, 3rd and goal at the 1, 4th and goal at the 1, and they could not punch it in. However, 3 plays later, Spencer Rattler obliged them and threw a pick 6, so they got their touchdown anyways. The Bucks had a hard time offensively in this game, but the Saints turned it over 4 times. You had the Rattler pick 6, Rattler lost a fumble, Rashid Shaheed lost a fumble, and then Tyler Shoa was put in, and he also threw an interception. So Tampa Bay generated 28 pressures in this game. Baker Mayfield faced his highest blitz rate of the season at 48%, and he was 4 of 11 for 12 yards against the blitz with 2 sacks. And the Bucks just desperately need to get healthy. They are so banged up, and they've got a great record, and it's just not going to matter if they can't get healthy. And so they hit a bye this week. It's a well-timed bye for them. They really need to get healthy because they have a brutal 3-week stretch after the bye. They host New England, and then they go at Buffalo, at Los Angeles Rams. And so that's going to be a key stretch for them. Hopefully they can get healthy. Hopefully they come out of the bye playing well because they're certainly a fun team to watch when things are clicking.
And even if they struggle in those 3 games, at least as long as they go 1-2, there's nothing to worry about in that division. Carolina's 4-4, but we don't take them seriously. Atlanta's 3-4. We don't take them as seriously. The Saints, as we saw in this game, are bad. But what we saw in this game, they were only a 3-point favorite, Tampa, in this game going into New Orleans, which I was probably the best bet that I hit this week. And Tampa did what a good team should do in this game, even banged up. They came out and they beat up on a bad team. The Saints probably should see what they have in Tyler Shough, but I think Spencer Rattler's probably earned himself like a chance as a bridge QB or maybe a backup QB, for a young quarterback. I guess that's kind of similar to bridge quarterback, but I think Rattler's probably earned himself a chance elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, they never should have drafted Shaw in the 2nd round anyways, but I get it. Like, it seems like there could be something there with Rattler if he stops being a bonehead, but you also kind of want to see what you have in Shaw so you can justify spending number 1 overall on a quarterback next in this draft when it doesn't work out. But they're certainly in a bad position for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not telling anybody Rattler's good, but I know that there's people out there who have been enthused by some of the stuff that he's put on tape. So he's at least earned himself a chance. I think probably they've hung in some of the games that he played. There's a question that someone asked that maybe it's too long to cover. They said, but they asked about the teams I believe are contenders this year. I'm curious what's one deadline move he thinks I should all make. My point about the deadline is I don't spend too much time thinking about the deadline in football because almost always it turns out to be like a fart in church a little bit. It's very rare. There's only like a couple teams that really seem to make big moves. But I will say I think that there's 8 clear contenders to me, and there's 6 in the NFC and 2 in the AFC. And maybe that's discounting Indy at this point, but I would say it's KC and Buffalo. I don't see anybody else winning the AFC. And then the NFC, I think there's 6 teams that could win it. We talked about this last week, but it's Philly, Tampa, Seattle, the Rams. It is
Packers,
Detroit,
Lions,
and Green Bay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody outside those 8 is going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I would maybe throw Indy into that conversation, and I don't fully believe them, but also like they just keep winning dominantly. So
I buy New England more than Indy.
Yeah, it's fair. I definitely buy their quarterback more, but okay, let's keep rolling. Dallas at Denver. Denver wins 44-24. Denver waited till the fourth quarter to get started last week, and it looked to be headed that direction again when Bo Nix threw a pick on the third play of the game. But then they scored 4 touchdowns on their next 5 possessions, taking a 27-10 lead into halftime. Bo Nix ended 19 of 29 for 247 yards and 4 touchdowns with 1 interception. J.K. Dobbins rushed for 111 yards on 15 carries. R.J. Harvey had 46 yards and 2 touchdowns on 7 carries and also caught a 5-yard touchdown. The Cowboys just have no defense whatsoever. Dak Prescott threw 2 picks in this game, and the Cowboys' offense has to be perfect for a chance to overcome this defense, and it simply wasn't. They also elected to punt on a 4th and 5 from their own 44, trailing 30-17 late in the 4th, when their defense had given up points on 5 of 6 possessions, but that's a whole separate thing. The big thing for the Broncos coming out of this game is Patrick Surtain leaving the game with an injury. Reporting is that it's a pectoral injury, but Jordan Schultz said he was going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Ian Rappaport said he was week to week. Maybe it's the whole Eagles thing where week to week means you're out for the season, but how soon he will be able to get back and what condition he'll be in when he does is going to be key for the Broncos moving forward.
Yeah, it is. But this was a big game more for the offensive side of the ball for Denver to flex their muscles and Bo Nix to say, I'm still here's a question for you. Who would you rather have for the next 5 years, Bo Nix or Jackson Dart?
Ooh. That's tough.
I think it's a total toss-up.
Yeah, I can't give a definitive answer on that. I'm with you.
I think Dart is basically like a slightly less accurate, slightly better athlete, Bo Nix in some ways. I think they're very similar. So I in a chat the other day, I was being told I was crazy for saying Nix was comparable to Dart and how Dart is way better at this point. And I think Bo showed up in this game and kind of, reminded people that he's a pretty good quarterback as well. He was being drafted as a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. But yeah, this was a big game for the Denver offense. I still don't believe in Denver as like a real deal contender. They would probably be like 5th in the AFC if I'm ranking them, even though they are 6-2 and the same record as New England, only a game behind Indy. Even me saying I don't really take Indy seriously, I take Indy more seriously than I take Denver, even after this game.
Yeah, well, speaking of Indy, they beat the Titans 38-14, and they just continue to operate.
1 minute warning.
Yeah,
you go.
All right, they continue to operate at a high level. Daniel Jones 21-29 for 272 with 3 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor rushed for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 12 carries, and he also had a TD catch. He has now scored 3 or more touchdowns in 4 games this season and trails LaDainian Tomlinson by 2 for the most occurrences in a single season. And by the way, LaDainian Tomlinson won MVP that season in 2006. Jonathan Taylor, MVP. We might be trending towards that. And I remember making a strong case for him just a few years ago for MVP. And he's doing it again, and really the first year he's been healthy since then. He's just an awesome football player. For Tennessee, I got nothing. If you want me to talk about you, be a real football team, hire a real coach, maybe hire an offensive line coach. You need to do a lot of things before you're worthy of being talked about. So let's move it along to Sunday night, unless there's anything you want to throw in there.
You were 2 seconds. You went 58 seconds.
Let's go. I didn't even have a timer going.
I got
All right. Let's get into Sunday night then. Green Bay at Pittsburgh. Green Bay wins 35-25. The Steelers led this game 16-7 at halftime. The Packers had gone 3 and out 3 times and missed 2 field goals. But then the offense exploded. They scored on 5 straight possessions until kneeling to end the game. Jordan Love completed 20 straight passes at one point. He ended 29 of 37 for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tucker Kraft put up 143 yards and 2 touchdowns on 7 catches, and 131 of those 143 yards were yards after the catch. He fell only 3 yards short of the franchise single-game record of 146 tight end yards held by Richard Rodgers. On the Steelers side, Aaron Rodgers put up a solid performance in this game. He went 24 of 36 for 219 and 2 touchdowns. He just can't take over games the way he used to be able to. And that would have been enough if he was with the Steelers of a year ago or 2 years ago. But unfortunately, the Steelers defense just is not able to get stops anymore. And so, like I think it was like Brett Eclipse mentioned earlier, the door is very much open for the Ravens if Lamar comes back strong.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Steelers have really faltered here, but the take is on the other side of the ball. Pittsburgh gets up 16-7 in this game, and I guess that means I'm bad at math, folks, but 28 to I guess that means the rest of the game was 28-9. For Green Bay. The second half Packers, that's the team that people like me who've been telling you they're a contender have been looking for since week 2. And Brad kind of mentions that in the comment. This felt like the best game since week 2 when they blew out Washington. They showed up this year, blew out Detroit in week 1. So impressive. Blew out Washington in week 2. And then it felt like people really erased that. Like, for instance, Heed the Call does power rankings every week. They were putting them like 11th as recently as last week, while they were the odds-on favorite in the NFC. It never made sense to me. Even this week, they put them 8th on their power rankings. For me, they're right there. Like, I would probably put them in the top 4 if I was doing power rankings, at least in terms of who can win a Super Bowl right now. So
it's just the lack of consistency with Green Bay. Like, their ceiling at their best, I don't think there's a team that can beat them.
Yeah,
the problem is that they don't string 2 halves of that together often, and often they go weeks between seeing that ceiling. And so I don't know if it's Jordan Love being streaky. I don't know what exactly it is, but they haven't been consistent. And if they consistently will perform at that level, then yeah, I mean, they should be topping any power rankings, but they just haven't done it consistently.
But they're still 5-1-1, and I guess my question is, like, they had those first 2 games, and then they won this game against Pittsburgh. Like, they had a 4-game stretch, right, where they went 2-1-1 against where it's at Cleveland. They lose 13-10, and that's a terrible loss. It happens mainly because of a blocked field goal, and inexcusable loss. Then you tie 40-40 against Dallas. Yeah, it's a bad performance by your defense. At least your offense hung in it and put up 40 points and, went and brought the game to overtime at the end. And then you have a game against Cincy where you won by 9, where people complained a ton about it. You have a game in Arizona where you won by 4, an Arizona team that loses by a field goal every week, and people complained about it. I guess I'm just asking if we gave them. I'm willing to crap on them for the Cleveland loss, and we did it on this show, and I think that they took hits on that from the power rankings. But I guess the 2-0-1 stretch where you tie Dallas and then you beat Cincy and Arizona, even if you didn't beat Cincy and Arizona by 40 points, I think we got too low on Green Bay collectively. And I think last week was an announcement in the second half. But like you said, they still do have to put it together. Like even in that game, they played terrible in the first half. So I agree with your point. They're definitely streaky, and the highs are high and the lows are low. But even with the lows that they've had, they're 5-1-1. Like I think I think they might go to. I think it's going to be us or them in the Super Bowl. I've said that since the off season. I still feel that way.
Yep. Yeah, I don't fully trust the Packers, but they're definitely very scary.
And Jordan Love should be very much in consideration for MVP. He's not really being brought up, I don't think, in that light. But if you look at his passing yards per game, and he's got 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His team's 5-1-1. Like I've said, like he has more passing yards per game than May, who I know brings more on the ground, but more passing yards per game than Baker, more passing yards per game than Josh Allen. He's been pretty darn good this year, Jordan Love.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to the Monday night game, another game that just wasn't very good. The Chiefs beat Washington 28-7. Washington intercepted Mahomes twice, but they threw 2 picks as well. Marcus Mariota just wasn't able to get much going here. Rashee Rice had a team high in targets for the Chiefs with 9. He caught all 9 of them for 93 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce was also 6 receptions for 99 yards and a touchdown. And again, the Chiefs just kind of feel inevitable, and they appear to be starting. And again, I don't want to get too far over my skis on the defense playing really well against a backup quarterback and a not very good offense. But the offense looked good. The defense looked good. It just sort of feels like the Chiefs are inevitable.
The Commanders, you could stick a fork in them. The Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl, and the Commanders are going to Cancun because they're losing to Seattle this week. They're going to lose to Detroit next week. Then you're 3-7. You have to go to Spain. Who knows if Jane Daniels, are you going to bring him back in a game in Spain or against one of these tough teams? And then you're 3-7 at that point. You still have games against Denver and Minnesota, in New York, against 2 games against the Eagles, another Dallas game. Like I think this is a lost season for Washington, and honestly, maybe it's the best thing that could happen to them, where Washington can pull it out and get a top 7 pick and infuse that team with some young talent that they are sorely needing. I know that they traded a lot of their mid-round picks, but that'd be big for them.
Yeah. I will be rooting for the Commanders to win 9 games and have the 17th pick in the draft. That's my rooting interest for the rest of the year. But
I agree. It's not a great draft though. Anyway, they're not going to get any crazy studs at the top.
Yeah. So all right, well that is going to about do it. 6 teams on bye this week, so there were 3 less games than normal. Also, they just weren't great games, but we still managed to talk about it for 53 minutes here into the show. Had some good conversations about some of these teams and where they're at, and there's a better slate of games this next week, obviously headlined by KC Buffalo, and so we will be back next week to break down all of those games. But Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts that you want to shout out?
Yeah, I'll just I'll say what I just talked about right there. Shane, you want to get excited for draft prep? I know Shane, not as crazy of a college football guy as I am in terms of doing the draft prep in the season, where he does the cramming that I used to do in college in the off season. And let me just tell you, Shane, if you want to get excited, it's the worst draft I can ever remember, in my opinion. I think it stinks at the top. I think that the 2 best players in the draft to me are very clearly a running back and a safety. So it'll be interesting how that plays out. I think the quarterback class stinks. The O-line class was supposed to be really good. I think that's actually even been pretty disappointing. So, yeah, yikes.
Yeah, well, fortunately for Eagles fans, they're going to be picking at 32 anyways. So, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But that's going to about do it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for episode number 209 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating wherever you stream your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Shane Half NFL. Mark is on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL, and we